Team, welcome back. We are here to present week 2 of the Process Summer Throwdown. Al, take us away with workouts 3 and 4.
This one's called Extra Salt, and it is going to be building to either a 5 rep max or a 3 rep max within a 10-minute window of a back squat. We're then going to be taking a small rest, a 2-minute rest, and then we are going to be moving into a fast sprint style workout of 10 dual dumbbell devil's press at your allotted load, 30 hanging leg raise for our live crew, into 30 box jump overs at 24 and 20 inches. You're going to have 6 minutes to complete that second part. For our perform crew, they are going to be doing a 3 rep max back squat within the 10-minute window, a 2-minute rest, and then moving into the 10 dual dumbbell devil's press, moving into 20 or 15 toes to bar, and 30 box jump overs at the same height. For our compete crew, it's the same thing, the 3 rep max back squat within the 10 minutes, 2-minute changeover into the devil's press, same amount of reps, 25 and 20 chest to bars, and 30 box jump overs. For our elite crew, it's the same back squat, the same devil's press, but 15 bar muscle ups and the same amount of box jump overs. But the box jump over height is going to be at 30 and 24 inches for those elite people out there.
Before we go and watch Ant Haynes take on this workout, and myself and Al break down some thoughts and strategies, really important that you guys make sure you go through the workout standards in detail, watch the videos, read the descriptions, make sure you know everything before you start going on through this workout. What we have today is a heavy absolute strength test, and we're doing that first when we're nice and fresh, followed by a sprint style test. Very contrasting to what we saw in week 1. All right, without further ado, we've got a 10-second countdown, and we're going to watch Ant Haynes take on this workout. Ant will be doing the elite variation of this workout.
At the CrossFit Games, must we add.
He is currently in the warm-up area of the CrossFit Games. He did say that he basically wasn't supposed to be in there working out, and I do know that, having coached at the CrossFit Games. This area is specifically for athletes, but him and Lee, who's about to compete at the Games, got down there nice and early before the crowd started arriving in. He basically gave himself a 5-minute warm-up and just got straight into it. So myself and Ant did talk about this. You know, he obviously had the fortunate or unfortunate task of testing all these workouts for us and allowing us to do this commentary. But we also did say we didn't really want him to go all out in his back squat test, because that's something we are going to be doing later in this cycle. We wanted to save it for then. Also, we do know when you are coaching the CrossFit Games, it's a fairly high stress job. So last thing we should really be doing is smashing ourselves in a workout. But I think there's still only plenty for us to talk about in this workout. So first part of this workout, Al, is a back squat, 5 rep max for live, 3 rep max for perform, compete, and elite. You got 10 minutes here. Tell me some of the things that you're thinking about in terms of how you would approach this part of the workout.
That there's not much of a rush to get through those back squats. I think 10 minutes of a window to build is quite a long time to build to a back squat. So I think you can be relatively conservative with your weight jumps. Again, you know that you've got the second piece coming up, but you've got a big old amount of time to be able to get through this, especially if you already know kind of where you're going to be hanging out for your 3 or 5 rep max. I think you're going to have a lot of attempts, or you will have a lot of attempts in a big time frame to get through this for the first piece. So there's not too much of a rush.
I will just throw something in there to not disagree with what you just said there, but another thing you should think about is that with an online competition, it's the beauty of online competitions, you can technically do whatever you want before you start this workout. Yeah. So what I would be doing or recommending that we do is actually you should be building up to something pretty heavy before you hit go on your clock. And then essentially when you hit your go on the clock, your first lift could be a testing set right from the start.
Could be your final. Could be your final lift.
Yeah. So if you are doing this, what I would recommend is, in your warm-up sets, building up to something, I would say like 90% of what you really want to hit, maybe even 95% of what you want to hit. Yeah. And then basically turn on your camera, declare your weight. Remember, you have to declare your weight before you hit your lift, and then hit your lift. Now, if you hit your lift with 9 minutes still left on the clock before that 2-minute rest, you've got plenty of time now to start thinking about getting warmed up for that next piece. Okay, so with that said, let's talk about that loading strategy. Whether you're doing a loading strategy before you start the 10-minute timer, or basically what Ant's doing here is basically getting straight into it and he's building through that. Now, what I would say is that in your incremental sets building up towards your test or your heavier set is I'd recommend actually doing less reps as you build. So if you're in the live category and you're building to a 5 reps, I wouldn't recommend doing 5 reps every single time.
Yeah.
I'd recommend starting probably with a nice high rep light load, empty bar or something super light, just to get blood to your legs and grease the groove with the movement pattern. But really, when I'm going to start building, as soon as it's getting remotely heavy, rather than doing 5 reps, I'll be doing anywhere between kind of 2 to 4 repetitions if I'm in live.
Yeah, you don't want to be doing more squats.
No, you want to basically
what's needed, especially knowing and looking at the next workout that's coming up, which we'll get into in a little bit. But you want to be conservative with the amount of reps that you're completing in that 10 minutes.
Exactly, yeah. And there's a lot of this in terms of your build. What you're actually trying to do is you're trying to prime your nervous system. Trying to prime your nervous system for something heavy. You're trying to just build confidence with the movement pattern and make sure the movement pattern's feeling good. But again, like you said, you're trying to preserve energy as much as possible. Now, in terms of rest periods between these jumps, generally speaking, what I'm going to say is that at the lighter lows, when you're just getting warmed up, we can afford to have fairly short rest periods there, anywhere between kind of 30 seconds, 60 seconds to 90 seconds. And as the weight starts to increase on your back, that's where we start to increase the amount of rest that we're having. So really kind of the rest just before your testing set, that's going to be your biggest amount of rest. Yeah. So make sure you're monitoring that. Now, if you kind of use the example that we talked about at the start here, which is, building up to about 90% of your test, starting your 10-minute clock, I would start at the beginning of that 10 minutes with whatever that first lift is of yours. And I'd really be kind of sitting down. I'd be using a whole kind of 3, 4, 5 minutes before, if I'm going to go again, to actually go again. Like, that's really what strength training should be. If we're trying to get, elicit maximal load, we want as long a rest as we can, up to the point of where we don't actually want to get cold and stiff. Right, so what Ant's doing here between his sets, I don't know if he's walking around because he's scared that someone might kick him out, but what we do need you to do is actually stay on screen at all points, and we know that's part of the video submission standards, so make sure you do read that. But in terms of what you do between those lifts, I would recommend you to try to preserve as much energy as possible, staying focused. For me, I like to just kind of keep to myself, stay in my own lane, stay in my zone. I'm not really having conversations or chatting to other people. I'm just kind of allowing my body to rest and when it's appropriate, starting to get psyched up for the next lift.
I think also what he was doing there is just going to get some clips. Just a reminder to everybody that for the lift to count, we've got to have clips on those bars. Now, that doesn't mean you have to have them on for all of the attempts. Just for the ones that are going to count towards your score, there has to be clips on. So, little reminder to Ant for that.
So, for this, you don't have to put clips on if you don't want a rep to count. So if you're just doing warm-up sets and you're trying to just conserve some energy or not waste time going to get clips and put them on, then of course you don't have to. I know that this is right now roughly about a 140 for Ant. I know that's still relatively light load for him. So, for him, he doesn't really need to think about putting clamps on because he knows that, he's going to hit something probably quite comfortably heavier than this. So therefore he'll save his clamps for that. Just a couple of things in terms of setup. What you'll notice Ant do here is as he unracks the bar and he takes a couple of steps back, he's not rushing into that first rep. We don't want to be rushing. We're also seeing that he's controlling his descent. We had a barbell competition just the other week where we had a front squat test. And what we did see is that when nerves and excitement got a little bit higher, people started rushing the eccentric portion of the squat. And what we start to do when we rush that eccentric portion of the squat is we can often lose tension at the bottom, and we kind of get that getting squished, is what people will say. You're getting squished or squashed out the bottom of the squat, and you're losing tension. So what I want to see is a nice controlled descent, and then as soon as those hips are moving below parallel, we're driving back up again.
I really like that, as well as I think taking an extra 3 to 5 seconds to set up properly. The bar's in the right place. You've filled your lungs with air. Your feet are in the right place for your squatting stance before you start to even complete that first rep. We know when people's nerves come up, there, those little things that make a huge difference, people tend not to do. So I think that's a really good point in terms of, especially when you're going to be going for those heavier lifts that are going to be counted for your score. Just take that extra 3 seconds when you step out the rack to make sure your feet are in the right position. You've taken a big breath, you filled those lungs up, and you're ready to kind of go into those squats from there.
Yes. I mean, yeah, what we do know is that often techniques and strategies change when we get into competition. But really, like, we've all back squatted before. We know the protocol and we train our back squat, and this should be no different. You know, don't start to speed up tempos. Don't try to change anything that you normally do. This is just another day of back squatting. So I know Ant has decided to call it there. Again, I know that that's probably quite a long way off what he would actually do, but that's still given us a pretty good example of what that would look like. All right, so obviously now Ant, it's about the 8-minute mark. I know he's kind of part-time coaching Lee here as well, because it's the 8-minute mark now. Ant would still have 2 more minutes before he hits that 10-minute mark. Then at the 10-minute mark, he's got a mandatory 2 minutes of rest where he's then going to start thinking about or getting ready to rock and roll for part B. So a couple of things out. Let's say you're in the same position as Ant where you've hit your last set of triple, you hit your last 3 or 5 reps in the back squat, and you got some time now left in that 10-minute window. What are you going to start to do now at this point?
Well, I think because the second workout is going to be fast for those people that can execute all 3 of the movements well, I would start doing some of the movements now so that I would have a little bit of a rest and a reload time, probably for myself, knowing that I'm not as aerobic as Ant, so that I've had a little bit more rest before I start the second workout. So I'd make sure I've gone through some of the devil's press, I've gone through some of the gymnastic element that I would be completing for the day, and I've gone through a few of those box jumps. I would go through that now after completing my back squats to then take a bit of a reload time, because I know myself that I have my recovery window is probably a little bit more than Ant's. So I'd have to give myself a little bit longer than the 2 minutes. I probably wouldn't be lifting anywhere after the 8-minute mark for the back squats. So I've had at least 4 minutes of rest versus 2.
Now, again, in terms of warming up for this workout, what I would be doing is the very first thing when I'm getting onto the floor is I'm just going to warm up my positions. Obviously, the squatting position is really important, but also going to be warming up the hinging position, which we're going to need for these devil presses. I want to be warming up the overhead position, which we're going to need for the bar gymnastics, but as well as the 2 dumbbells over our head, and making sure the calves and the ankles are super warm. Then I'm actually going to spend more time. The first thing I'm going to do is spend more time actually warming up this part of the workout. I'll be warming up the devil press, the gymnastics, and the box jump overs. That's my first priority. Get those movements feeling warm. Do kind of, broken down variations of that workout first. And then the last thing I'm going to do is then start building my back squat. I know technically that's reverse engineering what this workout looks like, but at the end of the day, we don't want to be doing our back squat warm-ups first and then dialing in this piece, because I know that's how, because at the end of the day, you just need to do your back squat first. And then you will have a couple of minutes just to get some touches on these movements before you start that last piece.
I think that's a big one, though, is when people have finished their back squat, we know that that's quite an adrenaline-filled movement. It's high, it's taxing on the central nervous system, just like Ant's doing right now. Once your central nervous system's fired up, do a couple of the reps, because it will feel slightly different. So I think that's a great point. Kind of what Ant's doing right now is he's going to do a couple of bar muscle ups, he's going to do a couple of box jumps, just so that he's greasing the groove for the movements, so that he feels comfortable with them, because they are going to feel very different. Not for Ant, because he didn't max out, but for a lot of the people that are going to be maxing to a true representation of their max, it's going to feel very different at this point.
Okay, let's talk about this last bit of the workout now. It's a sprint workout. When we say it's a sprint, we're going to have some athletes finishing around the kind of 2-minute mark. But we have got a time cap of 6 minutes. Just because we say the word sprint, it doesn't mean that everyone's necessarily going to be sprinting this workout. There is something in the middle of this workout that is a potential bottleneck for a lot of athletes. 10 devil presses alone is not necessarily easy. For stronger athletes, yes, that will be no problem. But for some people, actually breaking up those devil press might be a good idea, because what you have coming up after that is a big opportunity for lost time. So, in the lift category, we're looking for leg raises, where the feet actually having to pass through the middle, over the hips. There is a bit more of a technical component to that than just a knee raise. And then, of course, we've got a toaster bar, potential bottleneck here. If that 20 and 15 reps is beyond what you can do max unbroken, you're gonna have to think about a smart pacing strategy there, breaking them up from the start, maybe even breaking your devil press to conserve your heart rate. Obviously the same for chest to bar muscle ups, and then of course, like, a big potential for lost time is on those box jumps. For proficient athletes, we're going to see them going unbroken rebounded box jumps, and that's going to be important in a sprint workout. Now, let's just get into this workout now because Ant's now started. He's moving through his devil press. Now, something you'll see interesting here is that as Ant goes overhead, he brings the dumbbell straight to the floor.
He's not controlling the eccentric at all.
So what a lot of people will do is swing it back through the legs and then put it to the floor. Now, that swinging back through the legs on the way down is smart when you've got lots of reps to do. But in a workout like this, you've only got 10 and you're trying to move them fast. What Ant's doing, he's saving about at least 1 second to 2 seconds per rep by bringing them straight to the floor. Now, it's really important that this could potentially go wrong if you catch a corner of the hex dumbbell and it can kind of roll your wrists over. So if you are going to think about this, make sure you practice it in your warm up and make sure you're being super consistent where you place it down. So Ant's moved through his 10 unbroken pretty comfortably. Now, Ant's a really good bar muscle upper. So I have no doubt that he's going to move through these 15 unbroken. So this kind of part of the workout for Ant is going to be more or less kind of a formality. And then really for the elite athletes, it's going to be how fast you transition between your movements and then how fast you can move through your box jumps. For the elite, they do have 30-inch and 24-inch box jumps.
That's something to note for the elite crew is rebound 30 inches is very different to a 24 or 20-inch box jump over. So I think that's something just to note for the elite guys, that the box jump overs might be a little bit of a slower cadence than the lower inches on the boxes.
Again, when we think about we talked about kind of breaking the gymnastics. For a lot of people that might be smart, especially like knowing that the double press, it will jack your heart rate up and it will potentially tax the arms and the grip and the low back a little bit. So you're looking at the box jumps now for Ant. Now Ant's a pretty fast rebounder when it comes to 24-inch. So you're just seeing that momentary pause on the floor here. Now, 30 reps is still quite a lot at the end of 10 devil presses and those gymnastics. So, we expect this movement to get quite spicy and for you to feel it in your legs. Now, for some people, rebounding is not going to be an option for you because maybe you just haven't practiced movement. I know that for me, rebounding is not the most comfortable thing, but I know I can do it. But for lots of people, it might actually be better just to go for a step down. But just staying super close to the box and making sure you're stepping down and getting straight back up on the box as fast as you possibly can.
I think if you're going to be doing rebound jumps, it depends how comfortable you are with lateral jumping versus facing the box. So for someone like myself, I know lateral jumping is still relatively strong for me. But I know for a lot of people, not facing the box to jump over is something that's difficult, where the step down allows you to then face the box in order then to execute the next jump. So I think if you're comfortable not facing the box for your jump overs, for the rebound, or stepping down potentially could put you in a good place.
So Ant finished that workout in about 2 minutes 52. Again, he didn't really get much warm up there. We did actually see that box jump start to kind of wreak a bit of havoc on him. His cadence slowed down a little bit. He did have that kind of momentary pause. I do know that if Ant actually warmed up a little bit more effectively for that workout, he'd probably be able to turn something a little bit faster in. But we are looking really, if you're looking to go unbroken your movements, it's around kind of like a 2.5 minute workout. For some of us, we may be using that entire 6 minutes. I think one thing that we will definitely say is that you're probably not going to get too much interference from the first part of this workout, the back squats, into the second half. I know you can technically say, well, the back squats are legs and you need to use your legs for this, but short, fast repetitions. Like it's a strength workout, the first piece. For most of us, it's a power output workout in the second piece.
I think as well, knowing and being smart that you can give yourself a lot more rest before starting the second piece in order to feel as fresh as you can for those box jump over, which means there's less carryover from the back squat. Whereas if you spend the full 10 minutes back squatting, you probably will have a little bit more carryover into this.
Yes. All right, Al, I think that wraps up workout 3 and workout 4. Folks, if you are taking part in the Throwdown, make sure you go through those details. Remember, one last reminder, make sure you're hitting your standards perfectly. Film your workouts, meet the video submission standards, and we will see you on the leaderboard.